New rifles don't usually get my attention anymore. Most years what we see are recycled designs, new paint jobs, and marketing hype pretending to be innovation. But every once in a while, a lineup shows up that actually feels different. Rifles that weren't designed just to look good on a spec sheet, but to be carried, shot, and relied on in the real world. That's exactly what made me stop and take a closer look at what's coming into 2026. Over the past few weeks, I've been digging through manufacturer releases, early field reports, and hands-on impressions, separating the noise from the rifles that genuinely deserve attention. This isn't about brand loyalty or chasing trends. This is about practical performance, real value, and whether these rifles actually solve problems shooters and hunters have been dealing with for years. In this review project, we're breaking down 5 rifles that stand out for very different reasons. Some are budget-friendly workhorses built for everyday hunters. Some push modern design into territory that finally makes sense. And one of them exists purely to challenge expectations of what a modern rifle can be in 2026. For each rifle, I'll walk through what it is, what it does right, where it falls short, how much it costs, and most importantly, who it actually makes sense for. This isn't a hype list, and it's not a catalog read-through. You're going to hear both the objective facts and my personal take based on real-world use cases, not internet arguments. By the end of this series, you should have a much clearer idea of which of these rifles are worth your money, which ones are situational, and which ones are probably better admired from a distance. The first rifle that deserves real attention going into 2026 is the Glenfield Model A, and its return says a lot about where the market is heading. Glenfield coming back under the Ruger umbrella isn't just a nostalgia move. It's a calculated step toward giving everyday hunters a rifle that does the job without forcing them to overspend on features they'll never use. From an objective standpoint, the Model A is built on proven bones. You're looking at a 20-inch cold hammer forged barrel that comes threaded from the factory, which immediately puts it ahead of a lot of so-called budget rifles. Whether you want to run a brake or a suppressor, you're not paying extra or sending it out to a gunsmith. Ruger kept the 3-lug bolt with a 70-degree throw, and that matters more than people think. It cycles fast, clears optics easily, and doesn't beat up your knuckles when you're working the bolt under pressure. The adjustable trigger sits in that 3 to 5 pound range, which is exactly where a hunting trigger should live. It's clean, predictable, and safe enough for cold hands and gloves. The synthetic stock is basic, but it's textured where it counts, and uses Ruger's power bedding system to keep the action locked in place. Weight comes in at just over 6 pounds bare, which makes it easy to carry all day without feeling whippy or unstable when you settle in behind the rifle. Now let's talk price, because this is where the Glenfield Model A really earns its spot. MSRP sits right around $499, roughly $100 less than a comparable Ruger American. That's not cheap in a throwaway sense, but it's honest money for what you're getting. Chamberings like .BOT 308 minus .3006, .270, .243, 6.5 Creedmoor, .350 Legend, and .450 Bushmaster mean you're not changing your ammo shelf or rethinking your entire setup to run this rifle. From a personal standpoint, this is the kind of rifle I'd recommend to someone who actually hunts every season and wants something new without gambling on unproven designs. It's not flashy, it's not flying to impress anyone at the range, but it does everything it needs to do without excuses. If there's a downside, it's that it won't excite people who chase cutting-edge aesthetics or tactical features. But for a 2026 deer camp rifle, that's not a flaw. That's the point. Stepping up from pure budget territory, the Ruger American Generation 2 is what happens when a manufacturer actually listens to years of feedback instead of ignoring it. The original Ruger American earned its reputation by being affordable and accurate, but it was never perfect. Controls felt cheap to some shooters, the stock flexed more than it should, and the rifle always felt like it was one step away from being great. Generation 2 is Ruger closing that gap. Objectively, the core system remains familiar, and that's a good thing. You still get a 3-lug bolt with a 70-degree throw, but now it's a full-body CNC machine bolt with a larger handle. Cycling feels smoother, more deliberate, and more confidence-inspiring, especially when you're running the bolt fast from field positions. Ruger also added a 3-position tang safety, which is a major quality of life upgrade. You can lock the bolt, run the bolt on safe, or fully disengage it, something hunters have been asking for on this platform for years. Barrel configurations are where the Gen 2 lineup really spreads its wings. Standard models run a 20-inch cold hammer forged barrel with spiral fluting, a threaded muzzle, and a factory radial brake. Ranch models shorten things down to 16 inches and accept AR pattern magazines in calibers like 5.56, 300 Blackout, 350 Legend, and .400 Legend, making them extremely practical for suppressor use. Predator and Prairie variants. Trout for suppressor use. Predator and Prairie variants stretch out to heavier contours and longer barrels for varmint and distance work. This isn't one rifle pretending to do everything. It's a family of rifles built around actual use cases. The stock is the most noticeable improvement. It's stiffer, better balanced, and still uses Ruger's power bedding blocks. More importantly, it comes with spacers for length of pull and bolt-on comb risers, so you can set the rifle up properly whether you're running a low-mounted hunting scope or taller glass with exposed turrets. That adjustability alone makes the Gen 2 feel like a rifle that's finally grown up. Pricing is where Ruger plays this smart. MSRP sits around $729, but real-world street prices usually come in lower. That keeps it accessible while delivering features that used to require aftermarket parts or custom work. From my personal perspective, this is the version of the Ruger American that should have existed from the start. It still isn't a luxury rifle, and it's not trying to be one, but it no longer feels like a compromise. If you want a modern bolt gun for 2026 that balances cost, performance, and flexibility, this is one of the safest bets on the market. The Marlin 1894 Trapper in 10mm is one of those rifles that sounds like a novelty until you actually stop and think about how people shoot and carry guns today. For years, shooters have been asking for a practical lever gun that shares ammunition with a sidearm, and Marlin finally delivered something real instead of a concept piece. This isn't a collector's rifle, it's a working gun built for modern use. From a technical standpoint, the setup is straightforward and well thought out. You get a 16-inch cold hammer forged stainless barrel that comes threaded from the factory, paired with a matte stainless receiver and a laminated stock that offers real grip in bad weather. Overall length is just over 33 inches, and unloaded weight sits around 6¼ pounds. That keeps the rifle compact, quick to handle, and easy to carry in a truck, on an ATV, or through thick woods. The action feeds from a traditional tube magazine that holds 10 rounds of 10mm, and sights are a practical Skinner-style setup with a rear peep and a simple front blade. The receiver is drilled and tapped if you want to mount an optic, but the rifle works perfectly fine with irons, which fits the whole point of a trapper-style lever gun. Where this rifle really starts to justify itself is ballistics. Out of the longer barrel, 10mm gains roughly 200 to 250 feet per second over typical pistol velocities. That puts it squarely into effective deer and hog territory at realistic woods distances with proper loads. Price-wise, the Marlin 1894 Trapper in 10mm typically lands around $1,200 depending on availability. That's not cheap, but you're paying for stainless construction, modern manufacturing, and a configuration that didn't really exist before. From my personal perspective, this rifle makes a lot of sense for hunters and landowners who already run a 10mm handgun and want one cartridge to cover multiple roles. It's handy, powerful enough for its intended range, and genuinely fun to shoot. The downside, and it's worth mentioning, is that some early users have reported feeding sensitivity with certain ammunition profiles. That's not unusual for a new lever gun caliber, but it does mean you should test your ammo and stick with what the rifle likes. Once sorted, this is a rifle that fills a very specific role extremely well. The Sig Sauer 516 Mohawk is SIG's way of reminding people that piston-driven ARs still have a place, especially for shooters who prioritize reliability over trend chasing. In a market flooded with lightweight direct impingement rifles, the Mohawk takes the opposite approach. It's built as a hard-use 5.56 NATO carbine, meant to run clean, stay consistent, and hold up under long-term abuse. Objectively, the heart of the rifle is its short-stroke gas piston system paired with a 3-position adjustable gas block that allows the rifle to be tuned for normal operation, suppressed shooting, or dirty conditions without dumping excess gas back into the receiver. A 16-inch cold hammer forged barrel uses a 1-in-7 twist and comes threaded with a factory SIG flash hider. Up front, the free-floating MLOK handguard gives you plenty of room for lights, grips, or support gear without unnecessary bulk. SIG borrowed heavily from its MCX line when it came to durability. The receiver features steel reinforcement in high wear areas, and steel feed ramps designed to handle high round counts without deformation. Controls are fully ambidextrous, including the safety, magazine release, and bolt catch. One of the more unique features is the dual charging setup. You get both a traditional rear charging handle and a non-reciprocating side charger, letting the shooter run the rifle however feels most natural. The trigger is SIG's Matchlight Duo, which is serviceable and predictable even if it's not a match trigger. The rifle ships with a Magpul 6-position stock, and unloaded weight comes in around 8 pounds. That's heavier than many modern ARs, but that weight is part of what keeps the rifle controllable and smooth during extended firing. Price is where the Mohawk becomes a deliberate choice rather than an impulse buy. MSRP typically lands in the $1,900 to $2,000 range. From a personal standpoint, this is not a rifle for someone chasing the lightest build or the cheapest entry point. This is a rifle for shooters who value reliability, suppressor compatibility, and long-term durability over raw speed or minimal weight. It feels like a rifle you could train with hard, trust in bad conditions, and still be running years down the line. The final rifle on this list is not about practicality in the everyday sense. It's about capability, scale, and pushing personal limits. The Ordnance Thompson TA-50 is a bolt-action .50 BMG that exists for shooters who want a true long-range big-bore experience without stepping into the semi-auto price bracket. And for 2026, it's one of the most interesting options in that space. From an objective standpoint, the TA-50 is built around a roller-bearing bolt with a left side handle, which allows right-handed shooters to run the action without breaking position behind the optic. That's not a gimmick. On a rifle of this size and recoil profile, being able to stay on glass matters. The rifle features a 29-inch precision barrel with a 1 in 15 twist, paired with a massive proprietary muzzle brake that does serious work managing recoil. Overall weight sits around 25.5 pounds in the fixed stock configuration, which is heavy, but half pounds in the fixed stock configuration, which is heavy but necessary to keep the rifle controllable. The TA-50 feeds from 10-round magazines compatible with Barrett Mighty 2 and MEM17 patterns, and the furniture will feel familiar to anyone who runs AR-style precision setups. It ships with a Magpul PRS Gen 3 stock, a Timney trigger, a full-length top rail, and a bipod installed from the factory. Ordnance also offers variants in Bot 416 Barrett and a folding stock option for shooters who want a more transport-friendly setup. Price is where reality sets in. The TA-50 typically lands between $8,700 and $8,800 depending on configuration. That's not casual money, and it's not meant to be. From my personal perspective, this is a bucket list rifle. It's not something most people need, but for shooters who want to explore extreme long-range shooting and big-bore performance without stepping into custom builds or ultra-premium brands, it represents a surprisingly complete package. Recoil is still significant, but multiple testers have noted that it's more manageable than expected for a .50 BMG bolt gun, which says a lot.